Okay, we're starting now, guys.
Welcome to those of you watching and to the candidates. Good
Just-
morning. My name is Kristen Malone, and I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn. Thank you for joining us for this Glen Ellyn School District 41 School Board Candidates Forum. This year, there are 4 open school board positions and 8 candidates on the ballot. Voters will cast a vote for up to 4 candidates. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League works to increase understanding of the major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Although challenged by the pandemic, for the past 12 months, we have innovated and continued the League's mission of empowering voters and defending democracy, including hosting candidate forums last fall. And we are pleased to kick off our 2021 forums with today's voter information events. The forum format is virtual. We ask that candidates and viewers eliminate all distractions and give the forum their undivided attention as they would if they were at an in-person event. This morning, we're fortunate we have our moderator, Barbara Yong. Barbara is a member of the League of Women Voters of the LaGrange area. She is a partner of the Chicago law firm Golan Christie Taglia, where she practices in the area of business law, bankruptcy, and commercial litigation. Barbara is also an active member of many women's rights organizations. We welcome Barbara and thank you so much for moderating this forum this morning, Barbara.
Thank you and good morning. It's an honor for me to be moderating today's forum. I would like to begin by reviewing some of the League ground rules. All candidates have signed and returned the ground rules. These rules specify the format, time limits, and other rules related to conducting this forum. I will be responsible for enforcing these rules. The candidates will begin in alphabetical order with their opening statements. They will alternate the order in which they answer questions. And after the question portion of the forum, each candidate will give a closing statement. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for their opening statements, 1 minute to respond to each question, and 1 minute for their closing statements. Their responses will be timed, as you will see on the screen. The questions have been gathered in advance from the public. A panel of experienced League members have reviewed the questions to carefully screen for appropriateness and to avoid duplication. The event today is being recorded. The League claims copyright ownership of any recording or transcript produced of the forum. The forum will be posted in its entirety on the League's website, social media platforms, and the Illinois Voter Guide. Any other use of the forum recording requires the express written approval of the League. Audio and video must be broadcast unedited and in its entirety, except by media reporting on the event. Finally, I want to emphasize how grateful we are for these candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who have agreed to come here today. And now I ask the candidates, please start your video. And welcome. So today's first candidate for their 2-minute opening statement is Bob Bruno. Take it away.
Good morning. I'm Bob Bruno, and I'm the current District 41 Board President. I ran to serve on the school board in 2017 because after a lifetime in education, I wanted to offer my experience and time to our district and children. I am running for re-election because I hold strong to 2 simple and unyielding truths: that our schools are the principal pathway to a child's life of meaning and well-being, and that District 41 schools are the bedrock of our community's prosperity. My years of service to the community has revealed to me the time needed, the depth of dedication required, the expertise demanded, and the compassionate heart yearned for to be an effective board member. I have worked tirelessly in collaboration with parent groups, board colleagues, the district's educational professionals, and the superintendent to protect the health and welfare of all kids and staff. Since being elected, I have focused on providing the high-quality education that all of our community's children deserve. The issue on everyone's mind is how we will open our schools next academic year. And I can assure you that every district leader and board member has been working in partnerships with community volunteers, medical experts, teachers, and staff to be ready for a full and joyful opening. There is no doubt that District 41 will be educating our children in the fall with the same level of commitment you have seen this year, even in the face of a public health crisis. The district and the board have consistently followed the health guidance and provided daily in-person and remote education for our children. We have kept our people safe and educated our children in the face of a virus that has taken the lives of over 500,000 Americans, including some of our neighbors. Today, I'm proud to say that District 41 stands tall, remains excellent, and shines a bright path through a dark storm. It has been a pleasure to serve you. I'm grateful to be part of today's forum.
Thank you. And next opening statement, Candidate Collins.
Hi, thank you to the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn for hosting this event. I'm honored to be here. I'm Adam Collins, a resident of D41 for 4.5 years. My wife and I moved our growing family from the city in 2016, deciding that Glen Ellyn had everything that we were looking for, including a great school system. This past year has revealed a lot. It's revealed how much our teachers and staff love supporting our children and how D41 has delivered on its promise of increased equity by providing Chromebooks and internet access for children across the district. But at the same time, it has also revealed a deficiency when it comes to our vulnerable and special needs learners. As the Student Services Parental Advisory Council's liaison, or SPAC's liaison to Ben Franklin, I hear from special education families that are really struggling. D41 has given these parents a choice. They either have their child miss out on part of 2.5 hours of core instruction during the day so they can be pulled out to receive therapies or individualized instruction, or they can do these virtually during the PLC break or asynchronous portion of the day. The current board and district have denied reasonable modifications that would allow these children in school to receive those services, dismissing an opportunity for real educational equity throughout the district. As a parent of a child that receives services, it's important for me to actually advocate for this community. For every story that I hear, I'm sure there are so many more that haven't spoken up. As it stands, 80% of children in the district with IEPs aren't ready for the next level, and the longer we wait, the further behind these children will be. But of course, there are other issues. A dedicated early childhood center, full-day kindergarten, and space issues are no closer to being built or solved than they were 8 years ago. Board policies have changed, limiting the involvement of parents and staff on committees, and parents have expressed concern about the lack of involvement. I'm looking forward to change the way the board looks at these issues and also the way it interacts with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next opening statement, Candidate Dunham.
Hi, thank you for having me this morning. My name is Jodee Dunham. My husband and I moved to Glen Ellyn 15 years ago. We have 3 children, one at Glenbard West, one at Hadley, and one at Ben Franklin. Over this past year, one of the things that I found that concerned me was the disconnect between the board and community in regards to communication and engagement. In order to reconnect, if elected, I would like to start a community advisory committee. I believe this would create an ongoing engagement with the community as a whole. The committee would be made of 20 to 30 individuals who would deliberate and report their findings to the board regarding various issues and concerns. Ideally, the members would represent a varied cross-section of people from different areas across the district geographically, as well as a wide range of ages, educational perspectives, and opinions. I really feel that a committee like this would be able to engage a broader audience of the community. Members would consist of members with kids, some that did not have children in the district, but yet they're still affected by the choices that are going on within the district. I feel like this would offer different points of view views and insight that would be beneficial to the board. The goal would be to help keep us connected to a larger representation of the community. And those people would then kind of become ambassadors of sorts for the district within the community, within their own social circles.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll hear from candidate Emerson.
Hi, I'm Abigail Emerson. Thank you for having me. I have 3 children, 4, 6, and 9, 3 girls. My husband and I moved to Glen Ellyn in 2014, a couple days before my second daughter was born. And we moved here, like Adam said, in large part for the schools. And a little background, I was a 7th grade language arts teacher for 3 years in New York before moving here. Currently, I'm a VP of strategy for a school software company that equips administrators and teachers with equity-driven family engagement tools. One of the biggest tools that we provide is a dual translation mobile platform that allows families to communicate with teachers in their native language and for it to be translated back. Family engagement is a huge priority for me as a candidate. Schools see 4 times the improvement in literacy and 10 times the improvement in math when parent engagement is strong. Recovery is going to be an uphill battle this year. And parents' voices have been kept at bay. And we need families and this community engaged. We need their help more than ever. I don't have an agenda. I don't have any professional pursuits for doing this. I am just dedicated to this community. I just want to do something great and for this community when it needs it most. I truly believe that families deserve a voice and a choice of in-person schooling. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Now we'll hear opening statement from candidate Loebach.
Hi, thanks to League of Women Voters for hosting us today, and thank you to everyone for joining us to watch this forum. My name is Jason Loebach. I'm the current Vice President of the District 41 Board of Education. My wife and I have 6 kids in the district, 3 of whom have gone through the district and are either in Glenbard West or in college. I have a 3rd grader at Ben Franklin. I have a preschooler at Forest Glen, and I have another kid waiting to get into school. When I ran 4 years ago, my son Parker, who happens to have Down syndrome, was really one of the driving forces. In March of 2017, the district conducted an audit on its special education programming, and the auditors found that that program needed a systemic change. When I was elected to the board, I took hold of that change charge and led the district's special education strategic planning committee. 3 years later, April of 2020, those same auditors came back and said they couldn't believe where the district was. The district had took its special education program in a completely new direction, the right way it needed to go. While there's still work that needs to be done, I look forward to continuing that work in another term. This board is the first board that has really started to address the space concerns of this district by taking the first steps to acquire property to build an early childhood center, to address the space needs that are needed for our youngest learners. And I'm looking forward to continue that project going forward. Going forward, I'm committed to opening up our schools in the fall for all of our kids in an inclusive and equitable manner that brings all our kids to school at 8:30 in the morning on day 1 and keeps them there till the end of the day. So thanks again for the League of Women Voters for hosting us today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. And now we'll get the opening statement from candidate Martelli.
Good morning to all, and thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for hosting us. My name is Chris Martelli. My wife Jill and I moved to Glen Ellyn almost 6 years ago. We have 2 sons, Sean, who is a kindergartner at Lincoln, and Bradley, who is 3.5 and attending preschool at St. Mark's. I have been a public educator for 24 years. I have been a teacher, a coach, a building administrator, and I am currently the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Salt Creek School District 48. I have also completed my doctoral studies at the University of Illinois, where I defended my dissertation last March, entitled Valuing Non-Cognitive Factors and Academic Achievement for the Elementary Leader. And essentially what that means is, as elementary leaders, we need to have a clear understanding of how the social emotional growth and health of our students should be valued equal and on par with the academic progress that we see for our kids. There are certain dispositions and traits and skills that our students need to be able to develop, none of which are measured on high stakes testing, but we know to be valuable for our students, not only in the school setting, but once they have left the school setting. So the reason that I'm running for the school board is that I have a clear understanding of what successful schools and school districts look like. I have a clear understanding of how a variety of stakeholder groups are responsible for educating children. Those stakeholder groups include the community and the school board. It includes the Teachers Association, and it includes our building and district level administrators. And when those three stakeholder groups work well together, when they have established trust, then we see great things for our kids. And when those stakeholder groups have a fragmented relationship and there's a lack of trust, we see things that are detrimental to our students. And during this moment of crisis, we need to be very clear that those three groups need to work well and effectively together. Lastly, I have made a career out of making decisions that are in the best interest of students. So I've learned to manage and listen to and consider the opinions of those three stakeholder groups, and then ultimately do what is best for our kids. Thank you.
And next, we'll hear from candidate Sessions. Your opening statement.
Hi, thank you for having us today. I'm Millie Sessions. I have 3 kids in the district. I have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner. My family moved here in 2016. And I'm running for the board because I believe that I can bring an open-minded and collaborative approach to problem solving. Through life experiences and work experiences, I've learned that I can't hold my opinions above others, and I don't believe there's only one way to get things done. As a board member, I would want to listen to all perspectives and voices and work with others and subject matter experts already employed by our district to figure out a solution to the myriad of issues that our district faces. Issues like space, issues like long-term and short-term recovery plans, and how to educate our kids in an inclusive and equitable way. I also bring the unique perspective of having lived in a number of other places, including overseas. And while I lived overseas, my son was at a school where he was the only English-speaking student. And during that time, I was helping him struggle through the feelings of being an outsider. And I got some insight as to how parents feel when their kids are going through that. I also got insight as to how parents feel when they send their precious baby to a school every day where they might feel like an outsider. But the thing that came from the end of that time overseas was the joy my son had and the growth he had when he realized that he had done something really hard. And at this point in time, our community has the option to do that for our kids. Our kids have been through something really hard the last year, and we have an opportunity to really come together, to work together, and make the best path forward we can, so that at the other side of this, they can have that joy and empowerment, knowing that they've come through something really hard and they've had a community that supported them. And in order to do that, it's going to take all the voices being heard and having an opportunity to speak up. And it's going to take people who care enough to listen to them. Thanks.
Our final opening statement comes from candidate Syed.
Good morning. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting us. And I'd like to say thank you to all of you lovely community members for being with us this morning. My name is Tayyaba Syed, and I am a proud parent of 3. I graduated from UIC with a degree in biology and have worked as a freelance journalist for over 20 years, both of which contribute to my decision-making skills based on research and communication. My family and I have been in this vibrant district for the last decade. As the only candidate residing in Glendale Heights, the only Churchill parent, and the only one with the minority background, I feel the need to run for D41 board to truly bring a voice of inclusion, diversity, and equity. My daughter proudly attended Hadley wearing her hijab, where I also served as secretary on the PTA board. My presence was necessary for her to feel seen and like she belongs. I learned this the hard way, though, 8 years ago when my son was 5 years old and called a terrorist by his peers at Ben Franklin. As painful as that experience was for us, I took a proactive approach of educating others and spreading love by getting involved to bring diversity awareness into his classroom and school, not just for him, but for the well-being of future kids to not experience the same prejudices. Being an award-winning children's author, I worked hard to give all children a voice. I have had the unique opportunity of traveling across the US, meeting thousands of students, teachers, parents, and community members to truly understand the perspective of all stakeholders who help collaboratively run successful educational systems. As a product of the DuPage County Public School System, I am a strong believer in our schools having a great and lasting impact in our children's lives that can transcend generations to come. I will use my expertise to help strengthen our children's education and be a voice of service and support for all D41 stakeholders. I would be honored to have your vote for the Glen Ellyn School District 41 Board of Education on April 6th. Thank you.
And now we're going to move into the question and answer sequence. Reminder, each candidate gets 1 minute to answer these questions, and we'll get in as many questions as we can in the next hour. So we'll begin with candidate Collins, and here's your question. Describe the difference between the role of governance that a Board of Education has and the role of administration and management that the superintendent and senior staff have in the school district.
Sure. It's a complex relationship. The superintendent represents the needs of the teachers and the staff, but it also reports to and is held accountable by the board, which represents the taxpayers. I think that the relationships that have been built between the board, the community, staff, and administration have improved dramatically. I think that the board has done great work implementing policies and procedures that further the needs of the students, the staff, and the community. It is important to build those relationships, but it is important to mind what our role is. We do not manage the school district as a board. We govern. We instill policies and procedures. The superintendent manages the day-to-day operations of the board, and we have to trust that they can do that.
Now, candidate Dunham, and I'll read the question one more time. Describe the difference between the role of governance that a Board of Education has and the role of administration and management that the superintendent and senior staff have.
It's the school board's job to give the district a vision and a direction, and then the superintendent carries out that vision and direction. The board's also responsible for setting the budget, negotiating contracts, setting short and long-term goals with data points, so then we can hold ourselves accountable to the community and the children that we have in our schools. I also feel like you need to allow the administration to run the schools and the curriculum, and you, hand in hand with the administration, evaluate the programs on a regular basis to make sure that they're providing the academic level and excellence that we're aiming for. And I think it's important that the board supports the superintendent to achieve what our common goals are, and that we have a unified purpose for a quality education for all of our kids.
Okay, thank you. Same question. We'll go to candidate Emerson.
Thank you. So Adam mentioned that that the board provides a vision, and I think that's step one, really getting a good idea of what the goals and vision are for the district, and help set policy. Collaborates with management, superintendent. So the superintendent really is the one that is executing the initiatives with the teachers and staff. And the board supports the administrator. It's really, really important that the board lifts up the administrator and allows them to do their job. But also ultimately the board is representing the interests of the community, of the taxpayers and the parents, and then first and foremost, the interests of the students.
Okay. Candidate Loebach, your view on the difference between governance and administration and management.
Yeah, as a board, we govern through our policy. We set policies and we give it to the administrators to implement those policies within the district. The board sets the strategic vision of the district and thinks long-term in its approach, and the administration conducts the operational aspects of that strategic vision. So on one hand, the administration is doing the work and the board is setting the measures for the work that needs to be done. And in setting those measures, it's not just setting the view, it's also putting together a matrix of evaluation points, data points to measure that performance. And it's in that manner that this board has governed and is moving this district forward.
Thank you. Candidate Martelli, your view.
Thank you. I think this is a fantastic question. People have talked about vision and strategic planning. That is a big key of what school board members do. But I think it needs to be clear that when creating a strategic plan for a school district, it is not solely the school board's responsibility to do so. They do that in conjunction with community members, teachers, administrators, a variety of stakeholders that make up District 41. That is the what we want to become. That is the vision of what we want to see for our students in our school district. How we get there is school management. That is the role and responsibility of the superintendent and her team. Other pieces of the governance, as Jason has pointed out, oh, is my timer up? Sorry. Is just policy, the hiring of the superintendent, the caretaker of the community's funds and making sure that we've balanced the budget. Those are other roles and responsibilities of governance.
When you get the big red stop.
Sorry. Thank you.
All right, Candidate Sessions, your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've all answered it pretty well. The board's role is to be reflective of the community. I feel like that's who puts them there. That's who votes for the board members. So I feel like it's important that the board reflects the community voice and seeks their input. They set strategic, they set clear, attainable, measurable goals, to put it in a succinct way. And then the superintendent's job is to put those things into place so that they can happen. We measure those goals, we evaluate programs, we figure out what's working, what's not working. We give her more feedback and the superintendent makes adjustments. Our job is to support through resources and the approval of those resources so that they can go to programs that we've decided we want to have. I think it's important that that vision isn't just long-term, but short-term. You know, I currently wish we had a short-term vision right now for our school district, for academics and where we hope kids will be on the other side of this pandemic and how we hope to get them there.
Thank you. Candidate Syed, your thoughts?
I believe a board member's role and responsibilities require flexible thinking, active listening, thoughtful reflection, and applying all stakeholders' views. Each member sits in trust for his or her entire community and must maintain a connection with them. The obligation to govern effectively imposes some fundamental duties, such as creating vision and goals for the district's work and clarifying the district's purpose, addressing key concerns to student learning and organizational effectiveness, and as well as approving financial operations of the district. The board employs and evaluates the superintendent and holds that person accountable for district performance and compliance with written board policy. The board monitors performance and provides support to help the district meet its goals. We don't bring a bill of grievances or personal agendas. We say, here's what we value and what the district should consider, taking responsibility for ourselves through the process and educating ourselves as well. Thank you.
Now the next question, and we're going to begin with candidate Dunham. How would you build positive relationships?
Wait. I don't know if Dr. Bruno.
Okay, I apologize for that. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, candidate Bruno, same question.
That would have saved you at least a minute there, so I'll try to catch up here. So I think the two bodies answer two different questions. The board is answering the question, as Dr. Martelli noted, it's the what should be done, setting this strategic direction, providing oversight, holding accountable, evaluating, and then providing the resources to the district to achieve its academic ends. The administration answering that how question is about developing and then recommending and then ultimately implementing the means for reaching the goal. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, sorry for that.
That's okay.
All right, next question, as I said, we're going to start with candidate Dunham, and here's the question. How would you build positive relationships with the administration, union, parent committees, the PTA, the community, and fellow board members?
I think the main thing is definitely communication for all of the above. I think you need to be open to back and forth dialogue between all of those different entities. I think as far as communication with the community, like I was talking about, I would like to start a committee that extends us out into the district of people that we serve. I think communication with the administration, you have to have constant back and forth discussion and assessment of your programs and work hand in hand together. And then as well as with the unions and all of the rest of the administration too. So I guess mainly it's just having an open line of communication and being available to them on a regular basis.
Candidate Emerson, your view on how we build these relationships?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of active listening. So healthy questioning and dialogue and an openness. When people come together, there has to be an understanding that, you know, we're both there for the right reasons. We both have a shared, we both have shared goals. It's important to establish those goals up front. And then, you know, talk about how to get there, and then asking the right questions so that you truly understand the needs of the other party, whether it's the union, parents, or the administration. You know, I think that needs to be practiced. It needs to be active listening. So that means outreach, not reactive, proactive. So, you know, you're reaching out, maybe it's surveys, maybe it's meetings and committees, but you know, I think especially now there has to be an openness and bringing in a diverse perspective in those discussions and shared goals.
Thank you. Candidate Loebach, your view on building relationships with all these constituents?
You know, over the last 2 years, that's really been a big part of my role as a board member, because I would say 3 years ago or so, those relationships had really tanked. And we worked tirelessly to rebuild that relationship with the administration, the board, with the board and the community, and the board and the teachers and staff. And I'm proud to be endorsed by our teachers, you know, for the work we have done to rebuild that relationship. And we've worked hard to build back that community trust. And we've seen that demonstrated by the community by their participation in various committees, whether it be the Financial Advisory Committee, whether it be the Special Education Strategic Planning Committee, whether it be the District Long Range Planning Committee, the current Pandemic Advisory Response Team. We've created lots of opportunities for our community to be involved. And when you look at the school perception survey, the community is in support of the work that this board is doing. And I'm proud to see that support. We need to continue that going forward, continue that community involvement, continuing to build these relationships.
Thank you. Candidate Martelli, same question.
So yeah, I just want to agree with what everyone has said. There's a lot of great characteristics that we want to see in building and sustaining positive relationships, things like listening and active listening and making yourself accessible and being visible and understanding and appreciate others' perspectives and viewpoints that may be different from your own. I think doing those things, they do build trust between all of these different stakeholder groups. But I think ultimately what we need to see also is we need to see actionable steps of how you are going to go about establishing and sustaining positive relationships with all of these different stakeholder groups. An example of how I did that as a building administrator was I created a parent advisory council. And it was a group of parents outside the PTA that gave me a perspective about our school community that was helpful to me in making decisions for students. So I think all of those things and characteristics are wonderful, but they need to turn into some kind of actionable step in an effort to create that trust between all these different stakeholder groups. Thank you.
Candidate Sessions, what would you add?
You know, I think that these relationships are just like any other relationship, and they have to be founded on trust. Everyone needs to trust that the people there are there for the right reasons, and the right reason would be for education for the students. I think that, you know, our district currently does have a lot of great committees, but I've tried to get on them and I couldn't. And so I feel like how these committees are formed are pretty important. You know, whether it's, are they picked or are they volunteered for? I'd like to know. And I think that using those committees is essential. I know some of these committees haven't met since last October, so they aren't really able to give all that input. But I think that trust is the foundation to all these relationships. You know, the teachers need to trust that we care about their best interest, and we need to trust that they're doing what they can for the students, which we have fantastic teachers in this district who show up every day, and my kids have been blessed for them. So I think that we just need to continue that effort with that relationship and work on the community one.
Candidate Syed, your thoughts?
I believe a board member is an elected representative for all members of the community. It is a nonpartisan position and does not have groups of constituents, but it rather represents the best interests of all students. This means that we are present, we are accessible, we are approachable, and we are continuing to learn the community's needs. We listen to all members of the school community and study the data involved. If there's any disputes and any issues of dispute, as an individual board member, I can offer my perspective to the community and share their perspectives as part of the larger discussion at the board table. Building trust and creating opportunities of community involvement and mobilizing volunteers is important for us. The school board should keep in mind that the motto of D41 in the board meeting room on the wall is children are at the heart of all decisions. So we have to always keep them first and remember that there is a balance to be found with parent interests and district employees.
Candidate Bruno, what would you do to build these relationships?
Well, I certainly think it is critical that you respect the professionalism of our educators. And I'm also grateful for the endorsement of our teachers. The board can take a number of different steps to show that it's listening to the community and that it's embracing a set of diverse views. It can invite people to be part of committees. Board members can get out in the community and meet with parent groups. Board members meet with parent groups as a regular part of the work that they do. It's also critical that board members invite a multiplicity of views and respect the diversity of those views without mischaracterizing people or personally attacking individuals, welcoming those diverse views into the conversation. I think the board should also understand its role. It should keep to that role because only when it's truly governing can it respectfully embrace the community.
Thank you. And Candidate Collins, your thoughts on this?
Sure. I wasn't aware that the Glen Ellyn Education Association endorsements had come out publicly, so that's news to me. But I think Jason brought up a good point that the relationships that previously existed between the board, the community, and the staff weren't great years ago. They've improved dramatically. Teacher retention is now at 94%. It was 86% in 2016. So after the last 5 years, we've seen a marked increase in that relationship being built. But obviously solutions have been implemented and we need to continue dialogue between all the parties. We can't become complacent due to the recent success. We can't continue to pat ourselves on the back. There's work to be done. I'm coming to the board with an open mind. I'm willing to, and I want to work with existing board members. There will be 3 of them, in addition to the 4 candidates elected. They're going to have to find a way to work together. I'm open, I'm honest, I am willing to work for you.
Thank you. Okay, I think everyone's answered that question. We're going to move on to the next one. We're going to begin with Candidate Emerson. How will you solicit parental and community feedback? How often, and how will you use the information you receive if it conflicts with your own opinions?
It's a wonderful question. Although 4 candidates on this call are not on the board yet, we actually created a survey to try desperately to get the input and the voices of this community heard because of a wall that currently exists between the parent community and the board. It is absolutely essential, and it is a huge part of my platform to involve the community to get parent input. So surveys are one, so that we can get it to every single person in this community. Additionally, parent committees are important. To Millie's point, not handpicked by the board. We need a different way of getting diverse perspective and opinions and representation from all different types of families and different interests. And you know, it's absolutely essential. We're going to need community involvement more than ever this next year. So, you know, there has to be a humility that we don't know how to do it all. We need the community's input. We need their help.
Candidate Loebach, your view on soliciting feedback and using it.
Yeah, and I think the important part of your question there was the diverse part of the voice and responding and listening and engaging and embracing feedback that might not represent your own views. It's important to realize that as a district, we're here for the best interest of the kids. And that's not necessarily my best interest, your best interest, whoever's best interest. It's the best interest of the kids. And by bringing in diverse voices to be a part of that conversation, that's how you get to the best path for kids. And the district has conducted numerous surveys. In fact, to the extent that it's been totally over survey. But it's reaching out in whatever ways you can, through listening sessions, through surveys, through community engagement programs, through committees, what have you. But it's continuing that work, bringing in that voice, and then utilizing what you hear. That's the most important part. You can't just bring in the information. You have to utilize it, take those diverse opinions, and make it part of the conversation to move forward.
Candidate Martelli, your thoughts?
Sure. I think it really depends on the kind of survey or the kind of information you're looking to solicit from the community. And so what I mean by that is that oftentimes district administration will work in conjunction with the Board of Education in creating and sending out a survey just based on the information that we are looking to glean from that survey. There are times, however, that I think it's the responsibility of a school board, again, depending on what we're trying to understand, that they take it upon themselves to send out a survey to better understand the community's perspective or viewpoints on different topics or issues. I think having some kind of, as I said in my previous answer, some kind of actionable steps. Is that a listening tour? Is that some kind of a forum? Is that some kind of a feedback loop that needs to be created so board members are aware of how community members are feeling? And then the last piece about if it conflicts with my own viewpoint, I think this is a really great part of this question, because we all have to have a broad enough gaze and an open enough mind to give considerations to others' experiences that might run contrary to our own. Thank you.
Candidate Sessions, your thoughts?
Can you repeat the question for me again? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. How will you solicit parental and community feedback? How often? And how will you use the information you receive if it conflicts with your own opinions?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think great point in there that hasn't been addressed is how often. Is there such thing as too much? I think that's a good question. Right now, I would say no. There is a thing as parental rights, and we're having a hard time expressing that for our kids right now. And no one knows the kids better than the parents. And so sometimes that feedback is about just asking parents, what could we be doing better? What are your struggles at home? Validating their feelings and letting them know that they're heard. I can tell you that the last time that happened in our district was last summer. And there's a lot of frustration. And even when that feedback was solicited, the information was not used really at all. And so, you know, people can say what they want about Adam, Jodee, and Abby and I putting together a survey, but we're limited as what we can do because we're not current candidates. I mean, we're not current board members, but at least we did something to try and let parents be heard and feel like someone is paying attention and someone cares about what they have to say about their kids.
Candidate Syed, what would you add?
As a journalist, I made it a point to present both sides of the fence without bringing in my own opinions, views, or agenda. And this requires a lot of listening to those involved, giving them each a fair voice, staying neutral and unbiased, asking the right questions, and hearing more than talking. It needs trust and diplomacy. It requires flexible thinking, active listening, thoughtful reflection, researching, and coming to resolutions together. I believe parent engagement and involvement is key in the progress of our community. And I think one resource that the community does not take advantage of is the school PTAs. It's a great way to connect with fellow parents, teachers, administration, and the board members. People see it as a social outlet, but it can be much more than that. It builds community, improves relations, brings awareness and advocacy, provides educational and service opportunities for students and their families, access to open and honest conversations, and develops understanding. between one another. As general PTA meetings are open to the public, attendance is always low, and the school principal, some staff members, parent volunteers, and sometimes there is a board member present as well.
Candidate Bruno, what are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. So I think there are multiple ways to engage parents, and we've been talking a lot about surveys, and certainly the district does an extensive amount of surveying, and surveys that are done well and are truly representative, like the school perception survey, the 5 Essentials survey, the special ed survey that went out, the questionnaires, the 2 questionnaires that went out prior to the start of the 2020 year, actually provide important information for the board and the district to consider, leading to actionable steps. But that's not the only mechanism. And in fact, I think you have to be really careful with the misuse of surveys that can often push people into a response or offer them preferences that they really can't, where actionable steps really can't be taken. So this should be done in a very conscientious way. But we also have listening sessions. We also have the mechanisms to meet in small groups. And most importantly, the critical engagement is at the school level, student, parent, school level engagement. And that happens every day throughout the school year.
Candidate Collins, same question.
Yeah, I would like to ask if the current board is proud of the level of community outreach that they've done over the last year. I know they're proud of a lot of things, but if they're proud of this, then they certainly aren't listening to their constituents, because the overwhelming community sentiment is that we've been ignored as parents, as staff. And as Dr. Bruno said, there were 2 surveys sent out before the return to school this fall, but they were widely panned by the community. They were limited in scope. They were limited in the questions that they asked and the feedback that they solicited. As Abby mentioned, I'm proud to be a part of 4 candidates that have reached out to the community. And while there are inherent issues with the survey that we've released, and there's a campaign to discredit that, I think it's a positive step, and it's something that we're looking at reaching out to the community as a whole and trying to gain some insight as to what those needs are.
Okay. And candidate Dunham.
So I think as far as communication with the community, as I mentioned earlier, my first and biggest way would be for the community advisory committee. I think that would create a lot of feedback back and forth within the community. I also would like to do a more informal chats with the board every other month or something like that on top of the regular board sessions, where people could come in a more informal way and actually ask questions and have them answered right at that moment, because I feel like that would really benefit the communication with the community. As far as like different views, to me, I think as a human, you have to admit you're not an expert in every manner, and that you have to be open to input and ideas that stretch your thinking, and that.
Okay. And now we're going to move to question 4, and we're going to begin with candidate Loebach. How soon should all students return to school full-time? What specific challenges are there in having all students return to school in 2021, 2022? Give examples of how you would address these challenges.
Well, we won't be able to do that in 1 minute, but we can talk about how we can do this safely. We just came off the pause at Lincoln because of an outbreak at the schools. So we have to do this safely within the guides of student and staff well-being in accordance with scientific guidelines. But we're working to open up in the fall full board. And we're doing that in multiple ways. First, we're working hard to get all of our staff vaccinated. We're working with individual families to determine if your child has medical issues, what do we need to do to give your student a safe environment in school to learn? We're working with the local health departments to determine how can we properly layer mitigation strategies in order to work within our district footprint and thus reduce the 6 feet of social distancing. We have to move forward to in-person learning, but we have to do it safely. We cannot rush into this. To do so be foolhardy.
Thank you. And I'm going to read the question one more time, and then we're going to go to candidate Martelli. How soon should all students return to school full-time? What specific challenges are there in having the students return to full-time in 2021, 2022, and then give examples of how you would address these challenges?
Sure. So how soon should kids come back to full-time? As soon as possible, so long as all the variables have been given consideration, meaning that we've considered space, we've considered staffing, we've considered transportation, we've considered daycare, we've considered parental choice, we've considered mitigating factors. We've considered ensuring the inclusivity and equitable, factors that all students can participate. And then we've also given consideration to the stakeholders that are responsible for this, meaning the administration, the community, and the teachers union. As Mr. Loebach just said, without question, full person instruction is going to occur in the fall. The question becomes how? How do we do that? And that is going to be the responsibility of Dr. K and her team to figure out those variables. But I think what people need to understand is the complexity of this situation and all that needs to be given consideration when talking about let's get kids back to full in-person instruction as soon as possible. Thank you.
Candidate Sessions, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it is a complex issue. I think it's important that it is something that we never give up on. I feel like as of right now that the administration and the board has kind of thrown their hands up in the air and told parents it is what it is. We've been informed that the schedule is incredibly rigid and can't be changed. We as parents have to sit and watch other districts around us constantly reopen, constantly working to achieve safe and equitable reopenings for their students. And they're working, they're getting it done. Every day a new one's announced. And, it was pointed out that they have zero plans to reopen next year. And it's like, yeah, they don't need a plan to reopen next year because they reopened this year. And that is something that our board is missing. And that is something that parents want. And we can talk about engagement and we can talk about all these things, but if they can't feel the frustration parents are feeling with their lack of flexibility, then, it's definitely time for a change.
Candidate Syed, your view.
I am in full support of the administration's goal to get all students in person full-time this fall. I believe it is our moral imperative to still follow medical advice during a pandemic. We as a board would have to look at the science and data as it comes through the World Health Organization, academic medical schools, DuPage County Health Guidelines, CDC, and the most up-to-date research. As much as we want to maximize in-person learning, we must make sure to minimize any health risks. So we would need to consider how many people can occupy the same space while maintaining social distance and wearing masks. And Dr. K talked about that a lot in the email that she sent out to the parents yesterday. We also need to think about the students and teachers and administration's social and emotional well-being, making sure they feel safe and comfortable with the learning environment, and so do the parents sending their kids. And most importantly, how will this affect students with special or medical needs? We must take the whole community into perspective and provide what is best for all students. That requires guidance from the administration and listening to parents' needs, and then asking the appropriate questions. Thank you.
Candidate Bruno, your thoughts on in-person learning?
Yes. So I would agree that we are looking at the fall 2021. We have a commitment to come back in a safe and equitable and inclusive way. And frankly, now, when you take a look at the current conditions that we're in, it's important to note that in DuPage County, looking at all school district, pre-K to 8th grade, 82% of students are in a blended model, and 78% of those districts are in a blended model. So we're looking to the fall. We're committed to getting to the fall. Continue to use COVID testing of our students and staff. You want to layer various multiple safety mitigation measures. You want to be responsive to the special needs of all children. You want to look for a balance that respects educators, medical professionals, parents, to determine that safe, equitable, and inclusive way to fully and joyfully reopen in fall of 2021. Thank you.
Candidate Collins, your thoughts on this?
I think as everyone has said there, pardon me, there is a contingent of our community that have medical needs that would not facilitate a full day return to school, just the way things are right now. But looking at this, and I know we're hopeful for the fall, but come September, August and September, it'll be close to 18 months. And neighboring schools, parochial schools, private schools have been in school. They're doing full day, all day, every day, all of their kids. Outbreaks have been minimal. They've dealt with them efficiently and effectively, and their kids are still learning. I think while I'm very hopeful that we will go to school full day, all day this fall, like Jason says, I'm skeptical of the district's current plans. Nothing is concrete, nothing has been laid out.
Candidate Dunham, what's your view on this?
My view is I would like the kids to be full-time now. Everybody keeps saying fall, 2021, why not now? You need to be taking proactive steps right now. And it's recently been brought to our attention that there's been no space utilization studies requested for under 6 feet even at this point. That means there's literally no hard data on how they're going to get these kids back in, because what's going to change by fall if they're not looking at reducing the space? We still have the same space constraints. You need to know your space utilization because that's literally the foundation of all decisions. You can't move forward without that information and knowing how much space you have, and it can't be a guess as to how many kids you can fit in a room. You can't move on and figure out if you need furniture or plexiglass if you don't know by an actual space utilization study how many kids can actually fit in the school and how many cannot.
Okay, same question. Candidate Emerson?
I think it's extremely disheartening that this board continues to say, we're going to open in the fall. What is the benchmark? Why not now? Why don't we have a plan? I mean, as Jodee said, there have been 0 space studies conducted to try to evaluate how to get our kids into an in-person model. Jason said not in a day, but if we had a plan and our COVID levels reached a level that were low enough for us to return, may not be a day, but it could be a week. And then that would be additional in-person time for our kids that are struggling and that are desperate for in-person learning, more in-person learning. The blended model that Dr. Bruno referred to, we have 2.5 hours. A lot of those blended models are 4+ hours. And every single minute of in-person learning matters for our district and for our community. The fact that we don't have any concrete plans or any benchmarks is disappointing at the least.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to our next question, and we're going to begin with candidate Martelli. What can District 41 do to move forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives?
Well, the first thing that we can do is we can ensure that we're implementing the culturally diverse learning standards. Those are standards that we need to be teaching to our students up through 8th grade. And I think there were 2 things that I mentioned in our PTA forum on this topic. First of all, we need to make sure that we've equipped our teachers to engage in those conversations in a meaningful way with all of our students. There are a variety of resources that are out there now that would provide teachers the comfort and how to navigate some of those challenging conversations with our kids. The other piece is just some clear communication with our parent community as to how we as schools will be addressing these different topics. I think it's important that parents understand what kind of dialogue will be taking place dependent on the grade level in which your child is in. And so it's really a 2-pronged approach. Number one, ensuring that our teachers feel equipped to have these conversations. And number 2, that we've communicated clearly with the parent community what that kind of instruction will look like.
Okay. Candidate Sessions, your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives?
Yeah, I feel like diversity, equity, inclusion are really quite different than culturally responsive teaching standards that have come out. I feel like diversity, equity, inclusion is about how to reach out to families in our community that are diverse and help them feel involved. And I think that is done through a culture in our schools that really celebrates the differences among kids and families, and they learn to appreciate each other and value each other and the life experiences they've had. It's a great thing for a child's world to be opened up through a friend or through a family or neighbor that has had a completely different life experience. That is something as a community we should be celebrating. We should be reaching out to these families that may have barriers, whatever they might be, language or whatever else, and help them feel included in what's going on in the schools. You know, a lot of parents, you know, they can't do PTA because of time or whatever else. Okay, so then what works for you? What are some other events that we can get you into the school and help your family really feel involved and celebrated and like part of our community?
Okay, Candidate Syed, same question.
Diversity is my life. It's not a campaign slogan in any way. And, you know, bringing awareness of our differences and really making people feel like they belong has been my life's mission. And I feel that representation has to be on the board. The board should represent the community it serves. Our 34% of our district's population is of minority background. And if I was elected on the board, that would still only be 1/7, but it's better than nothing. And we need to be seen and heard. And I'm doing what I can to educate myself and reach out to different families, different learners, meeting with different people in the community and finding out what our needs are. And this, we need to help bring awareness to the classroom where majority of our teachers are not diverse, and helping them be able to make these kids feel like you're seen, you're heard, and you matter. And I was able to do that with when my son was in school, but we need to continue doing that as a district and overlapping our circles instead of keeping them so separate.
Candidate Bruno?
Yes, thank you. So let me talk about some things that the current board has already done to give people a sense of what could develop going forward. First of all, we began a strategic plan that we had to put aside when the pandemic hit, but that strategic plan, this new strategic plan, was going to embed diversity, equity, and inclusion and find a way to evaluate the district's growth in that area. So that's a proper role of the board, providing direction through the strategic plan to make diversity important. Secondly, the board is participating in the community's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that was started at the Glen Ellyn Library. Third, you look at your policies, your recruiting and your hiring policies to value diversity. You want to put people in that classroom that look like your student population. And board members can also be better informed. They could educate themselves. And this board is doing that by looking at how race, gender, sexual orientation, and class actually impacts learning. Finally, we can use our resources to properly allocate them in areas that address equity through our budgeting.
Okay. Candidate Collins?
Pardon me. I think as candidate Syed mentioned, it's important to note that about a third, roughly a third of our district is made up of minority constituents. That's a third of the experience that a lot of us don't have, right? We aren't knowledgeable. We're trying to educate ourselves and we're trying to learn more. And then I think continuing the DEI initiative in the community is a fantastic opportunity for kind of difficult discussions and education about issues that bring a different viewpoint onto things. I think it's worth exploring. Like I said, it's something that we need to do. It's a commitment that we need to make as a district to allow these voices to rise up and have an equal stance as the rest of the community.
Candidate Dunham, what would you do to advance these initiatives?
I think that right now, as for right now, I think that the most equitable thing you could do would be to get the kids back in school full time. The ones who are falling behind the most are low income and minority families, and it's becoming the haves and the have-nots. Those who can will, and those who can't. And it is creating such an inequity that it's so sad and disheartening. And I also think that it's very important to take into account the social and emotional needs of these kids, and that next year there is going to need to be some major priorities as far as putting protocols in place, because they've really taken a hit over this past year emotionally as well. And I think all children need to feel safe and important and included at all times.
Candidate Emerson, what would you add?
Equity and inclusion, it's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I work to move forward in my role. I hear of many challenges that teachers and administrators have with families that have barriers of access to family engagement. I mean, family engagement is the way to lift up these families, to reach out and to improve their experience dramatically. This pandemic and our hybrid model will have contributed to a huge increase in the equity gap. There's going to be varying levels of students and where they stand with their skills and learning, and we need to figure out a way to boost the differentiated learning model to a huge degree. So, but as Jodee said, the best way is to get them back in school.
And the final word on this, candidate Loebach.
As I've said earlier, my son Parker has Down syndrome, and one of the things that I was worried about when he was born was him going into a school that was inclusive and a welcoming environment for him. And one of the things that I've done really to promote inclusion in this district is my Rock Your Socks campaign. And this year we're doing a Rock Your Socks drive. Please go to your school, donate your socks. Let's help everyone rock their socks for World Down Syndrome Day, to celebrate the diversity of others and to celebrate the fact that it's our differences that make us who we are. I've also continued that strive and work on inclusion and equity in my work on the state of Illinois. I'm a subcommittee on inclusion. And I've brought that work back to the board table. And through that work, we've had our teachers and staff doing PD on these exact issues and do it in a way that allowed them to develop learning and teaching strategies, to embed strategies into the curriculum to help our kids learn inside the classroom, not to have to pull them out. And when we talk about equity, we have to talk about what's doing best for individual kids and then doing that for every kid in our classrooms.
Now we're going to begin the next question with candidate Sessions. What is your position on full-time kindergarten, and what needs to happen to make it a reality?
Well, that's a favorite question these days with these forums. I feel like it's a favorite question for everyone all the time here. You know, I think, like I said last week, I am in favor of full day kindergarten. Do we have a plan to achieve it? No. Right now we have a proposal for an early childhood center. That does not fix our full day kindergarten issue. The proposal we have now is to help ease Forest Glen and their early childhood school there. It would open up classrooms there, but we wouldn't have full day kindergarten. I'm in favor of it. We need a new proposal. We need new numbers, and we need to expand on what the current board has done. Early childhood does not get us full day kindergarten. I think that there's a misconception when it's talked about at the board that they have achieved a plan for full day kindergarten that is just simply not there. I think it's important to ask the community what they can support and what financing they are willing to commit to make this happen. It has to be a community supportive thing, because the money is going to come from there. That's it, sorry, overtime.
Okay, candidate Syed, your view on full-time kindergarten.
I am definitely a supporter of it. I have talked to Mr. DePorter, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Facilities and Operation for us in D41, and asked him how feasible this is for us. And right now, of course, our priority in budgeting is going to keeping the schools safe during the pandemic. But this would be, of course, you know, a 4-year term, and I would want to be able to bring enough options for us to be able to start this process. And, you know, the thing that we have to consider, according to Mr. DePorter, is staffing and the cost that would go into that, making sure that there's space and of course, keeping our children safe. Is this something that the whole community would want? How would we fund that? We could potentially offer a tuition-based program for parents that really want it. Of course, offering, you know, assistance to those that can't afford it, but making sure the kids have playtime, making sure they are have time to explore and not just learn, but also develop social skills.
Candidate Bruno, your thoughts on full-time kindergarten?
Yes, thank you. So it is important to note that this current board is the first board that took action to acquire land that would incorporate not just replicating the pre-K program at Forest Glen, but expanding that program and creating the option for full-day kindergarten. That was always part of the conversation. And the board's action is to create the possibility of doing something truly transformative. If in fact, we really care about equity, then the most important step we can take is to invest in expanding early childhood learning and full day kindergarten. The implications over a lifetime would be reaped by investing in this early learning. Finally, because we fully funded schools, this current board, in 2 consecutive years, we have created a strong reserve that will enable us to purchase this land and to build this center. Thank you.
Okay, Candidate Collins?
Well, full-day kindergarten has been a topic of discussion in the D41 community for 8 years. It was part of the reason we moved here 4.5 years ago, the hopes that full-day kindergarten would be around in time for my youngest to attend. But as I said in my opening statements, we're no closer than we were 8 years ago. Dr. Bruno says that we have acquired property, and we have property at Spalding, but there is currently no plan to build on that property. We're acquiring property at Churchill through eminent domain, but that is going to be held up in court and litigation for quite a while. Again, there's no plan. I think it's important, because of the division on the community regarding this topic, that we solicit feedback, we solicit input, and we heed the needs and the voice of the community when it comes to implementing a plan for full-day kindergarten.
Okay, Candidate Dunham, your thoughts?
So full-day kindergarten, I think, is essential. It's a matter of figuring out the best route to go about that. As far as the property behind Churchill, I'm looking forward to the resolution of that's going on to get that piece of property, because I do think you could build an early childhood and full-day kindergarten building back there. I think that I agree that, like, if you did a tuition-based kindergarten, maybe that would for that. And I think, again, yes, you need to poll the community. You need to get communication from how they feel about it, what they're willing to fund, what support as far as, like referendums or not. And I also think that having the community committee would also help with this, because you have people out talking and advocating for the kindergarten.
Okay. And Candidate Dunham, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. So next time, if you can move closer to your mic, that might be better. Okay, Candidate Emerson, your thoughts on full-time kindergarten?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing I can do right now as a candidate is to assure the community that in my work and in my experience, well, first of all, I'm very interested in pursuing full-day kindergarten. As Bob mentioned, equity, it does lift up families. Some of these families rely on school, not just for educating their children, but so they can function and they can operate. So it is something that I'm very interested and invested in pursuing strongly if elected. To Adam's point, and Millie's, it has to be community supported. Getting feedback from the community, from the taxpayers. Ultimately, there may be the requirement of a referendum. There may be some other things at stake there. So we need to be active with the community and get their feedback.
Candidate Loebach?
Yeah, I have a hard time understanding where people saying there's no plan on this, or where the district is no closer to this than they were 8 years ago, when this board, this current board, of which I am a part of, has taken the steps to acquire property. And while a former board had some members who said, we want to keep this structure limited to a very small footprint, there was others on that board, including myself, including Dr. Bruno, that said, that's way too short-sighted. And it was way too short-sighted. And we've continued to say that it is way too short-sighted, and that we need to build on that property a structure that moves this district forward. And as everyone has said, and which has been done in the past, we do need to engage the community on this to determine what is going to be supported by the community. Full day K would open up a lot of opportunities within our district, but we have to do it in a way that this community will support it.
And candidate Martelli, the final word on this.
Sure. I think it goes without saying that our current space won't allow for full day kindergarten in any of our elementary schools. So when giving consideration to the space that would allow for full day K and our early childhood programming, we need to recognize that as we look to engage the community, this needs to go beyond just engaging them around kindergarten, full day, and the early childhood programming. If kindergarten classrooms were to be moved out of the elementary buildings into this space, it would allow for additional space in our current elementary buildings. And we need to have a communication and a plan for what we're going to use that space for. And it could be used for anything in regard to STEM, labs, to maker spaces, to 21st century learning hub spaces for our 1st through 5th grade programming as well. And so without question, we need to have community engagement. Without question, we need to give consideration to what we currently have in our fund balance and our reserves. But we also have to have a clear early childhood through 5th grade programmatic approach that we can then share with the community when considering this plan.
And I think we have time for one more question, and we'll begin with candidate Syed. Do you believe District 41 has adequate funding to meet its needs, and why or why not?
Yes, I do believe that the district has adequate funding, and I do believe that it has been responsible with its money and its funding. When I was researching, I learned that our student spending, per student spending, is in the bottom third in the county, which really goes to show that we've been smart with our money and putting the kids first. And the one thing that does concern me, and something that I would want to address if elected on the board, is how can we help 23 homeless students that we have in this community. That number should be 0, and what we can do for them and how we can use our funds to make sure we have 0 homeless kids. But I do believe the board has been doing a wonderful job with the money, thinking of not just now, but the future and what we can do with it. And all my conversations with Mr. DePorter have been very positive, and he's the financial committee as well. They've been very great advisors for us.
Candidate Bruno, do you think the district has sufficient funding to meet its needs?
Yes, I certainly do, and it does, because the current school board has responsibly funded the needs of the schools based on the recommendations that have been brought forward by the district. Also, if you took a good hard look at where that spending goes, District 41 targets a significant proportion above the state average and well above the level of most schools in putting that money into the classroom and actually into instruction. Its actual administrative capacity per student is well below the state average. That's because the district puts its money into where it's going to be most impactful. That's the classroom. And finally, every year, the district is very good about looking for savings. It budgets what it needs, but then it looks for savings. It competitively bids out work, and it's done a really good job to put the district in a healthy fiscal place to do some truly transformational work.
Okay. Candidate Collins, your view on district funding?
I think we absolutely have adequate funding. I think the current board has done a good job at bolstering reserves. We have well above the legal limit of reserves that we're required to carry. But looking forward, those reserves are going to be quickly depleted if we build an early childhood center or a full day kindergarten center. The cost to build plus the operational costs will take that budget down very quickly. And so we're going to need to examine moving forward, if we're right sizing the district, to be frank, if that's going to require a referendum or increased tax levies. I think it's something that we need to look at year by year and examine the financial status of the district, because it's a very dynamic creature, and an answer today may not be the answer tomorrow.
Candidate Dunham, your thoughts on funding?
I feel that we definitely have a very healthy surplus budget at this point. I do think that as a board, you need to be constantly analyzing the expenditures and the programs that you're running, and deciding on their cost effectiveness and making sure that the money is going to high priority needs. But I do feel that at this point, we have a healthy budget. But yes, I mean, if you build a new building, like that will become another matter that will have to be analyzed and figure out what kind of funds will be needed for that as well.
Okay, Candidate Emerson?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably we're not gonna see a whole lot of disagreement here on the fact that we are well funded. I think it's important to remember why we're well funded. We have incredibly high taxes, and our schools are one of the main reasons why people move here. 40% of those taxes go to our district. So yeah, we're gonna have some good funds, which is fantastic. But what's extremely important to remember, especially as we look at the value of living in our community and the property values that people here have invested in to get their kids in a good school system, is that we have to be extremely responsible with every single expenditure and every penny, more so than other districts that don't have the property taxes that we do. So we have a responsibility to the taxpayers, and especially to the children of this district, to carefully consider every single expenditure. We are going to need a lot next year, and everything that we spend, we need to make sure that it's moving the needle in the right way for our kids and students.
Okay, Candidate Loebach?
Yeah, I completely agree with Abby there that we have to be responsible to our taxpayers. And one of the ways that this board is doing that is by continuing to advocate for federal funding for this district. There's currently $1.1 million that's allocated of federal funds from the new CARES Act budget to go to D41 that we are advocating to get released to us. We've also engaged our financial advisory committee, which is made up of community members, volunteer community members, to help us develop this financial plan going forward. We talked about a healthy reserve. We have a healthy reserve. And the reason we have that healthy reserve is because in working with the FAC, they've said in order to build this early childhood center, build reserves up to here. Keep your base reserves at 25%, and then have excess reserve for a specific project-based issue. That project-based issue is an early childhood center. And so, and Adam's also right, those reserves are going to drop down when we build an early childhood center, because that's the plan. And it's a plan that's been developed by this board with strong community input from our financial advisory committee. We also have to look at the equities in our spending to make sure we're supporting our minority students.
Okay, and Candidate Martelli? Same
Yeah,
question.
I think it all depends on how we define what the needs of the district are. You know, do we have a health, are we in a healthy financial place, and that we carry roughly 35 to 50% of our annual budget in the fund balance right now? We do. And so in that sense, we are in a healthy place financially, but we need to give consideration to, as Jason just pointed out, how much of the CARES Act are we going to be getting? How is the district going to address incomplete learning over the course of 2 school years now for our students? Is that going to require additional resources or additional staffing situations that the CARES Act may not cover? What are the long-term plans for this fund? So that gets into what Adam has brought up about this early childhood and full-day kindergarten center. And so when we say, do we have enough funding for what the district needs? I think that's relative to what we think the district needs. Day-to-day operation, we do have appropriate funding. But if we've got vision for ourselves into the future, I think that becomes a little more of a complicated conversation.
Okay, and finally, Candidate Sessions?
I'm going to agree. I think we are well funded, but I think when you pay top dollar, you have top dollar expectations. And I think that right now those expectations are not being met. We pay very high taxes for what we moved to a village to be, very high education standards. And if you go to our website, go under academic learning, go to benchmark reports, go to the strategic plan update, you will see that our high standard is not so high anymore. It is slowly lowering. We have to keep it high. I don't mind paying the top dollar, but I expect high performance. And while we might be in the top 10%, we used to be in the top 6%. And I think that those are all things that we need to keep in mind as board members, and we're evaluating programs and how effective they are. And as parents, when we're paying these tax dollars, we want to know that people are being held accountable for that academic performance of our district.
So that concludes our question and answer part of the forum. And we're going to turn to our closing statements. Again, everyone gets 1 minute, and we're going to begin again with candidate Bruno.
I want to thank the League for hosting this forum and share a brief story. I recently met Mark Luganbill, who is the son of past District 41 President Mary Luganbill. The board's meeting room at CSO is named in honor of Mary. Mark handed me the transcript of his mother's presentation at a national convention titled How to Be an Effective President. I want to share the last paragraph. Quote, "The board president touches only peripherally and yet very importantly our largest and most valuable constituency, the children. We must use our influence to leave our schools a little better than we found them. That is our only reward. I firmly believe our schools are better, and there is nothing more that I seek. And finally, I want you to be aware that I recognize my fallibility. I'm not immune to criticism, and while it is painful to feel the hurt of others, I consider it a blessing that it leaves a mark because it keeps my mind open and it keeps my heart open to those who disagree with me. The sign of a leader is someone who doesn't reply to invective with insult, but in fact holds open his heart and mind to talk with and work with people he disagrees with. Thank you all for the conversation today."
Thank you. And closing statement from candidate Collins.
Sure. Thank you again for hosting, and thank you to the community members spending their time on a beautiful, welcome spring day, learning more about the candidates. I said this at the PTA forum on Tuesday, but I think it bears repeating. I know there are parents out there who are frustrated. They're frustrated about 2.5 hours of learning of poor instruction a day. They're frustrated about the lack of response from the board and district on issues and concerns, the lack of prioritization on special education programs. And I want to say to those who are listening and watching, you don't deserve to be frustrated. You deserve a board that's responsive, who holds the district accountable, who are looking to build on the successes and learn from the decisions of previous boards. There's a great opportunity over the next month to elect new board members and introduce new thoughts, new life into the board with a range of opinions that will not lead to what some believe to be at least 2 years of potential 7-0 board decisions. I look forward to the opportunity to serve D41 as a board member. Thank you.
And we welcome candidate Dunham with her closing statement.
I just wanted to say thank you to the League for offering this opportunity this morning. And I wanted to say that I really would like to have a hand in moving the district forward, not just for getting the kids back in full time, but I also would like to set a new long range plan and really move into full day kindergarten and get some of those things that have kind of been hanging over the district for years resolved. And I'd also like to take a minute to highlight and thank our amazing teachers and administrators. I know that it's the board's responsibility to offer resources and support them, and in order to make their jobs easier. And I know this past year has not been easy on the teachers, and being able to provide those resources and support to them is a huge priority to me. Thank you.
Okay, candidate Emerson, your final thoughts?
Thank you for having me today, and thanks to the other candidates. Some have asked what the biggest differences are between the two groups of 4 candidates on this call today. So I'd like to make that clear. I'm running with 3 other candidates who believe it's absolutely essential to seek out and address the voices of this community and its needs, and to get community input and family engagement. On the flip side, 4 candidates here today gave the district an A for their work this year, despite the fact that parents were kept at bay, voices not heard, while a group of 7 decided what was best for them and their children. And that was a plan that has been unchanged since July, so unlike so many districts around us making in-person happen now. No space studies, no new furniture ordered, no contingency plans, no benchmarks, no acknowledgement of severe learning loss, no surveys or parent input. There are 4 candidates that don't see the true value and need for parent voices or help. The other 4 do. Please vote middle for our kids.
Okay, Candidate Loebach, your closing statement.
Yes, and again, I'd like to just thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us today, and to all the community members that have joined in. Earlier in this forum, Adam asked a question. He asked it, I guess it's Bob and I, and he said, is the district proud of its community engagement this year? And I've heard time and time again how this current board hasn't engaged the community and hasn't listened to parents. And I want to go back to a specific date, December 16th, 2020, when myself, Dr. K, Laurel O'Brien, held a question and answer session for our special needs families. And we did that with a special needs advocate that advocates for special needs families against school districts. We brought in that advocate to be a third voice in that room. And we did that because it's that distinct, that dissenting voice that moves us forward. This isn't a board that doesn't listen to outside voices. This isn't a board that doesn't engage parents. We do so. And we bring in dissenting voices to move us forward. And we're committed to do that going forward in another term. So I hope I have your vote on April 6th.
Thank you. Candidate Martelli.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to all the community members of Glen Ellyn that have joined us this afternoon. In considering my candidacy, I hope there are things that I have spoken to that you gravitate to and that you appreciate, such as understanding the clear differentiating roles between governing and managing a school district, understanding that as a board member, we are a community representative that also works with other stakeholders, including the administration and the teachers unions, and understanding that when those relationships are effective, students benefit. And when those relationships are damaged, then students adversely get impacted in our school setting. And yes, while I may have stated that I think the district has done well during this remote learning experience, I wouldn't wag my finger at anybody, any other community member that felt as though their experience was different. As a community member, we need to be open-minded to the differing viewpoints and experiences that our children have had and that we have had as adults, and recognize that we are all in this together and we'll get through this together. Thank you.
Candidate Sessions, your closing remarks.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the League for hosting the forum today and for giving this opportunity to speak to the community. This has been an interesting process and one that I didn't ever vision myself going through. But, growth can be painful. And here I am trying to grow as a community member and as a parent. And I'm only doing this for the long-term results for the benefit of my children. I feel like I am uniquely qualified for this, along with Adam, Jodee, and Abby. We are 4 very independent voices with 4 very different viewpoints that are trying to work out what will be the best way to come out of the pandemic for our kids, and then to hold the district accountable for the following 4 years in areas where they need improvement. That is truly the goal of our candidacy, and I have nothing else to say except for thank you and vote middle 4 on April 6th.
And finally, Candidate Syed, your thoughts.
It's important to remember that we are all here on the same side, the side of our kids and the betterment of our district. I am a servant and champion of my community. Your kids are my kids. I am not coming in with a list of grievances, but to support this great district. A board member is an elected representative of all members of the community. The board should represent the community it serves, like I said. And I am proud to bring a third of our district's population voice to the table as the only minority candidate, the only Glendale Heights resident, and the only Churchill parent. The school board should also be open to all points of view, measured in response and fairness to all parties, and that there is a balance to be found with parent interests and district employees. I am a good listener. I am a creative thinker. approachable, resourceful, empathetic, and work well with others. I am also willing to learn and grow together with my fellow board members as we collaborate our sincere efforts to govern responsibly. I am here for you and I thank you for being with us. My name is Tayyaba Syed, which is saved the best for last on the ballot. Thank you.
I want to thank all of the candidates for participating today. Your participation is now complete, and I ask you to stop your video. Our
Thank
time
you
is
all.
up for this morning's forum. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your participation, whether you're a candidate or a voter. For 100% nonpartisan election information, you need to please go to the IllinoisVoterGuide.org, which is powered by the League of Women Voters of Illinois, or visit the Glen Ellyn League website, LWVGE.org, where you can also find a recording of this forum. Please come back and join us on March 13th and March 20th for our remaining candidate forums. Please, please remember to vote. It's essential to our freedom and our country. And again, have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.